As India heads towards the centenary year of her independence, it is time for us to reflect on the milestones of the past and also chart out a roadmap for where we wish to be. The government has asked individual ministries to draw up an action plan for change with the emphasis on improving the ease of living, the ease of doing business, focus on education, healthcare, climate action and more. Now, while the government readies its plans, CNBC-TV18 in association with IIM Kozhikode is launching a leadership series to engage in a meaningful dialogue to map what the key drivers for our social and economic growth should be, to capture our aspirations as a nation and draw up a charter of change. Over the next few weeks, we will speak with leaders to help shape the idea of India at 2047. Now, in a post-pandemic world, countries are increasingly looking inwards and the world order is getting rebalanced. As a result, foreign policy needs to be agile to succeed in the uncertain times that we live in. Culture, political ideals and foreign policy, these are the three pillars that decide whether a country exports fear or inspires hope. The ability to inspire hope in a world gripped by fear, that is soft power. As countries move forward in an era of increasing deglobalization, soft power resources at the disposal of governments could be critical enablers and facilitators of foreign policy. For 75 years, India has been hailed for its democracy with all of its paradoxes. Today, it is the tech capital second to none. Silicon Valley is being shaped as much by IIT as it is by MIT. India's consumption story has made it a crucial market for global enterprises. From being labelled the land of spirituality and well-being to the home of yoga and Ayurveda, since 1991, India has tried to reposition itself. With the unshackling of the economy and business, India has over the past 3 decades become the pharmacy of the world, the tech innovation hub of global business, one of the world's leading startup nations and a key exporter of talent. And even as we consolidate our economic gains, the influence of Bollywood and butter chicken cannot be ignored. Harvard professor Joseph Nehu, introduced to the world the idea of soft power, says it is the ability to obtain preferred outcomes through attraction rather than coercion. So how important will soft power be for the India of tomorrow? How can soft power be deployed effectively? And what will be the weapons of mass attraction as India marches ahead? Former diplomat, author and Lok Sabha MP Shashi Tharoor once wrote, "The world of the 21st century will increasingly be a world in which the use of hard power carries with it the odium of mass global public disapproval, whereas the blossoming of soft power, which lends itself more easily to the information era, will constitute a country's principal asset." To talk to me on how India can enhance its soft power, I'm joined by Shashi Tharoor. Mr. Tharoor, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Let me start by asking you exactly that. Why do you believe that soft power is India's greatest asset in the 21st century?
Hello, Shereen. Good to be back with you. Well, first of all, because obviously if you have the ability to attract others, other countries, other publics, other journalists, and so on, through your cultural assets, your values, your foreign policies, then you can economize on the sticks and the carrots that more military-oriented or hard power-oriented countries are obliged to do. So soft power kind of serves both as an alternative to hard power and as a complement to it. Hard power is pretty expensive to acquire and to wield, whereas soft power just emerges from the world's perceptions of what your country is all about. So the attitudes and associations conjured up in the global imagination by the mere mention of your country's name, India, is often a more accurate gauge of soft power than sort of a dispassionate analysis of culture, foreign policy, or whatever. Because while hard power is exercised, soft power is evoked. It's evoked in people's imaginations, in people's consciousness. So I think, because we benefit from so many aspects of our culture that are attractive to the rest of the world, they don't threaten anybody. Those are the elements that, in my view, we should be interested in strengthening in order to be a source that's considered attractive and admirable by other people around the world. If global influence is what you want, they're going to get there faster through soft power than through trying to become a superpower where we are a long way away from.
Mhm. So let me pick up on that point, because in the TED Talk that you gave a few years ago, speaking on this issue, and I know that this is an issue very close to your heart, you said that soft power is something that really emerges partly because of governments, but partly despite governments. Now,
That's
especially
right.
in an information era that we live in today, Mr. Tharoor, what do you believe the role of the government needs to be to further this influence that you speak of? And what can civil society and other institutions do?
Well, governments, both have a role to enable soft power and a responsibility to get out of the way, because in many ways, the blossoming of soft power that you talked about, you quoted a line of mine from some years ago, um, is essential, but it's not about conquering others, right? It's simply about being yourself. Um, so countries are constantly projecting elements of themselves onto the global consciousness. And you can do that as a government deliberately through the export of your cultural products, festivals of India, that kind of thing, the cultivation of other countries' publics by reaching out to them, even international propaganda. Increasingly, the world is full of people who can see propaganda for what it is. But you're also projecting or undermining soft power unwittingly through the ways in which you're perceived as a result of, say, news stories about your country in the global mass media. Soft power, in my view, is always much more powerful when it isn't deliberately marketed, but rather when what genuinely represents the culture of our country also appeals to the people of other countries. So what I'm trying to say is that if we can at least strengthen, if our government can help strengthen those elements of Indian society, Indian culture, Indian conduct, Indian values that the rest of the world finds attractive, then you will do far better than if you simply want to issue propaganda or organize international festivals celebrating your country and so on. Because the strategic advantages that we've got out of our soft power, goodwill for our country, for example, amongst African, Arab, Afghan publics in the past, have been sort of largely unplanned byproducts of the normal emanations of Indian culture, the popularity of Indian movies and TV shows, the larger-than-life image of Indian actors and actresses, and songs, and that sort of stuff, Bollywood. Now, I praise the government for having leveraged International Day of Yoga into a soft power asset. Those are all positive things about India that the rest of the world is impressed to see. But you can't go around systematically harness goodwill, right? A lot of it is about what you are seen as being as a country. And if India wants to be a source of attraction, these things alone, Bollywood, fashion, music, yoga, wonderful to the Ayurveda, all of this is great, but it's not enough. We do need, for example, to preserve the precious pluralism that is such a civilizational asset in our globalizing world. It's essential to not allow the specter of religious intolerance or political opportunism to undermine our soft power, because that's such a major asset to us. Our democracy, our thriving free media, our contentious civil society forums, our energetic human rights groups, our free press, the repeated spectacle of our remarkable general elections. All of these have been soft power assets. They make India a rare example in the world of the successful management of diversity.
Mr. Tharoor, you sort of spoke about what has been part of India's soft power strategy, which is Bollywood, Ayurveda, wellness, the land of spirituality, and so on and so forth. As we look ahead to 2047, do you believe that much more of the soft power needs to now be shaped through the economic lens? I mean, we are today the pharmacy of the world. We are today one of the startup nations of the world, home to, 60 plus unicorns. We are the vaccine capital of the world in many ways. How much of that now needs to be part of the narrative as we shape the soft power strategy for the future?
No, actually, economics is seen as part of hard power. Economics and military muscle. If you're a big economy generating billions of dollars, you have lots of military, lots of tanks, planes, that's hard power. But if you spend some of that to help people in distress, that becomes soft power. So when our Navy went off to Indonesia after the tsunami to try and help victims there, that became an exercise in soft power. If you send your pharmaceutical products and vaccines to poor countries, either below cost or for free, to help people there get relief or vaccination, that becomes soft power. So it's not just your growth in economics. CNBC, I know, celebrates big economics, and that's wonderful, but that doesn't give you soft power in itself. People admire your hard power as a big economy. It's how you use that economy to help others that reveal your values of compassion, your values of humanity, of internationalism, of reaching out to others. You know, when we, for example, became a major center of medical tourism, that helps. And then when we are, for example, every once in a while, I remember we used to read articles about some poor Pakistani at a time of tensions between India and Pakistan, some poor Pakistani coming to a hospital for an operation that couldn't be done in Pakistan, that saved the life of a child, of a Pakistani child in India. There your soft power goes up. So you see the difference. Soft power is literally, it is about softness. It is not about flexing your muscles, whether it's your economic muscle or your military muscle.
No, I didn't mean flexing our economic muscle. Let me put that in a different way. For instance, what we are seeing in the context of the rise of the Indian diaspora, I mean, every major tech company today has a CEO of Indian origin, from Microsoft to Adobe to Parag Agarwal at Twitter to Sundar Pichai at Google. How important is that in shaping the idea of the India of tomorrow?
No, that's a great asset. It's ironic because obviously these people have all become citizens probably of those countries that they're working in now. But the fact that these major corporations, Fortune 500 companies, and some of the top firms in the world are headed by Indians makes people look at India with respect. There is a sense that, being an Indian suggests you've had a solid grounding in, say, technology, that you're competent, you're reliable, you're hardworking, you deliver results. All of that obviously is a huge asset because that becomes part of the default image of India. I remember 20 years ago when I was in the US, they launched a show that went on to become number one for several years, a very successful, popular show called ER, which stood for Emergency Room. Yeah. But when the first pilot of that show was broadcast, it got universally panned by the critics for one reason alone. They said, good production values, great acting, good script, etc. But whoever heard of an emergency room in America without an Indian doctor? And they had to quickly rewrite the script and write an Indian doctor into it, Parminder Nagra of Bend It Like Beckham fame, in order to be credible. Because in America, every single hospital emergency room, and indeed many private practices, thrive with Indian doctors in it. And that perception is part of also our soft power, the sense that every Indian is either a highly sophisticated techno geek or a highly qualified medical practitioner doesn't hurt. It's a long way from the days when Indians were assumed to be fakirs lying on beds of nails or mendicants holding out begging bowls. So the image has changed, and with that, of course, our soft power has been enhanced.
Well, since we're talking about the changing world order, especially in the context of what the pandemic has done and the emergence and adoption of technology like never before, in that context, what do you believe will need to be the imperatives, both from what the government can do, as well as what we, with the media, civil society, in being able to take the idea of India forward? I mean, are there any specific areas that you believe we need to focus much more on as we look ahead?
Well, I think we certainly can, as I said, even with the help of the government, leverage our natural soft power into a valuable instrument of our global strategies by highlighting those positive aspects of our culture, our society, our educational system, our medical strengths, all of those things, while frankly trying to eradicate the negatives that do hurt us. So I would say that if we want to take concrete steps to leverage our soft power, and it's worth doing because obviously soft power has a wider and more self-reinforcing reach than hard power. We have to understand what has worked for us in the past and reinforce those elements. There's very little doubt that if you look at China or Russia, kung fu movies or the Bolshoi ballet have won far more admirers for them internationally than the People's Liberation Army or even Siberian oil reserves. Because in each case, the latter may be what the state relies upon. But for the rest of the world, these are not things that are attractive. These are simply things that are at best intimidating and at worst examples of what's wrong with those societies. So what you want is to see the good things about a society. India, for example, if we dramatically improve and expand their education system, so once again, people from developing countries, as they used to in the 50s and 60s, come to India to study, That'll enhance our soft power. That's something the government can definitely do. Let's see a major 1,000 flowers blooming in our educational system. Let's indeed make our medical practices and our public health such a byword for excellence that, again, people come in large numbers to seek treatment in our country. Let's do the same with our pharmaceutical industry, send things out systematically, and the government has to purchase the medicines from the companies in order to send that out. That's a worthwhile investment because that will enhance our soft power. It's examples like that. It's constantly doing things that the rest of the world will admire, but which are intrinsically linked to what we are good at in our own society.
So, Mr. Tharoor, let me end by asking you, and I go back to a quote from your TED Talk. You said the notion of world leadership seems to be terribly archaic. It's redolent of James Bond movies and Kipling ballads. So, as we look ahead, what should India aspire to be?
Well, I'd like, first of all, our priority to be Indians. That is, that I would like us to be a country where nobody goes hungry, no child is growing up malnourished, no one has to worry about whether they can educate their children or whether they have prospects for a job, a shelter over their heads against the rain and the sun, 3 square meals a day, all of that. But then once those basics are guaranteed for every single soul in our country, every single body in our country, then the next aspiration must be to give people the opportunity to lead enriched and meaningful lives. And when I talk about meaningful lives, that also includes lives that are not affected by social stresses and strains and conflicts and so on, but lives that are full of the sense of being able to pursue one's own potential. Somebody wants to be a musician, somebody wants to be a chef, somebody wants to be a yoga teacher, somebody else wants to be a spiritual guru, somebody wants to be a movie star whose movies are seen around the world. All of those options are open to you in India. You want to read MRIs, you've got offshore companies that do that for you. You want to be a cricket star and dominate the world and make millions of rupees, you can do that too. A country where people have the potential to fulfill what's best in themselves. And if we can create in the same time, not only that potential, but also where people are left alone to be themselves, where neither the government nor mobs of vigilantes come and tell you what you can eat, how you can dress, whom you can love, and all the other things that some people are foolishly believing is their business, then the world will admire us. Whereas if we are actually showcasing through media reports about India the worst elements in our society, then obviously our soft power will get corroded and will probably start fading away. We really have to fix our own internal arrangements to ensure that doesn't happen.
Shashi Tharoor, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on India 2047. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Shereen. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you as well. Thanks very much, Shashi Tharoor, for presenting us with a blueprint for India's soft power going forward. We will take a break, but there's a lot more when we return. Don't go anywhere. Now, what is soft power? It is the ability to get what you want through attraction rather than coercion or payment. It arises from the attractiveness of a country's culture, political ideals and policies. When our policies are seen as legitimate in the eyes of others, our soft power is enhanced, explained political scientist Joseph Nee, who also coined the term. To talk about India's soft power, joining me now is Professor Debashis Chatterjee, Director of IIM Kozhikode. Professor, you just heard Shashi Tharoor there explain his thesis on India's soft power. What particularly stood out for you, and what, according to you, will be the top pillars of India's soft power strategy going forward?
Thank you, Shereen. It is wonderful to be part of this stimulating discussion. Soft power is intangible yet potent, like truth or transparency, gravity or magnetism. Soft power is harder to acquire, it is more subtle than hard power. Conventionally, soft power translates as a subtle, organized influence of a nation, mounted on the hardware of military might, economic prowess, and cultural fabric. Joseph Nye's paradigm, which Shashi Tharoor talked about, eventually leads to sharp power rather than soft power. Our physical as well as psychological world, our landscapes as well as mindscapes appear in contrasting shades of the hard and the soft. Soft power is an important design principle in determining how a nation or a culture is perceived and experienced. France, United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, and the United States occupy top 5 slots in the Soft Power 30 report of 2019. Japan is 8, South Korea is 19, Singapore is 21, and China is 27 as the leaders of Asian nations in this survey. The surprising and consistent omission of India, often touted as a soft power nation or a soft nation, from the Super 30 list deserves deep deliberation. In 2047, we need to recalibrate and redefine new set of measures to capture the changing dynamics of soft power. We need to find a new idiom to unlock the value and vibrancy of the soft power assets of India in 2047. The soft power of 2047 will be a synthesis of ideology, biology, and technology. In the face of extreme uncertainties like climate change and threats of pandemic and war, we need a new mind that can shift between algorithm and altruism. On the cusp of the 4.0 world of industrial revolution, a new paradigm of power is emerging rapidly. The future of power appears a lot less like a standalone technological civilization fueled by artificial intelligence. The future of power will be a lot more of a sweet synthesis of ideology, biology, and technology, as I said earlier. The synthesis of real and the virtual. The world will move seamlessly from human instinct to imprints on our screens. The future of power will be an intermingling of carbon and silicon brains that can best be described as symbiotic intelligence. In 2047, Indian medical professionals could provide far better and cheaper healthcare for billions of people, particularly for those who currently receive no healthcare at all. Thanks to learning algorithms and biometric sensors, a poor villager in India might come to enjoy far better healthcare via her smartphone than what she gets today and what the richest person in the world gets today from the most advanced urban hospital. In 2047, a farmer will use microclimate predictions in India, enabling him to take hyper-local decisions for agriculture and renewables. In 2047, Bollywood would be reborn as Indian cinema rather than an imitation of Hollywood. In 2047, India would be the world's innovative hub for wellness, climate, agriculture, and who knows, even sports. Our knowledge age has heightened the global competition for minds. Attracting talent and intellectual capital from around the world is seen as a potent tool for enhancing a nation's soft power. Not so long ago, India had a long and impactful influence of Vishwaguru, the educator of the world. Nalanda and Takshashila were known far and wide as propagators of wisdom. Yuan Sang and his chronicles of his pilgrimage to India describes India's journey as a journey to the West. India was aspirational for China at one point in time. Please remember this. The real power of India lies in the soft symphony of aspiration. It is aspiration that builds great nations. Transformative education is a building block of our national aspiration to be a global super soft power. India's ultimate destiny will be to educate more than 1 billion competent and compassionate citizens for the world stage. In 2047, the Indian story is likely to be vastly different from what it is today. The new Indian mind is being shaped in real time as I say this. In 2021, there were 487 million WhatsApp users in India alone, making us the leading country in terms of WhatsApp audience size. Second rank, Brazil had 118.5 million, which is less than a quarter of Indian users. Billions of text messages transacted through WhatsApp and other social media are shaping the cognitive map of India. The new Indian narrative around digital startups and incredible India are being scripted right now and here. Our stories serve as our most significant cognitive maps. Stories script into one integral wave. The world of information, emotion, consciousness, and context in which India is bound to thrive. In the post-pandemic world, there will be a decisive power shift in the world of enterprise, from producing to innovating, from consuming to caring. The catastrophic aftermath of mindless consumerism will only make the cry for mindful and compassionate capitalism a little shriller in the years to come. Indian civilizational ethos is primed for leadership in this century. The ancient aphorism from the Rig Veda, Bahujana Sukhaya Bahujana Hitaya Cha, for the happiness of the multitude and for the welfare of the many, just about sums up our India's vision for 2047.
Well, Professor Chatterjee, thanks very much for joining us. It is clear that India needs to be strategic about building its soft power. We need to see a greater determination to cultivate the country's soft power and turn it into a valuable instrument of our foreign and economic policy. Well, let me end with a quote from Joseph Nee: "Smart power is neither hard nor soft. It is both." Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you soon.